Hey everyone, it's Mazik. I'm here with the spoiler filled version of my movie review of Star Trek Beyond. This is going to be a long video. So, let's go ahead and start it off. This movie starts off in the funniest place I think Kirk could have been. I'm a fan of conflict and having, some action beforehand, but this is like the most playful thing that could have happened ever. Kirk is in this giant, what appears to be like this lion's den almost, and he's sitting center stage with this relic that he's using to offer peace from two tribes that are warring against each other, and there's this big, almost like a lion dog creature that's just sitting up on this throne, and Kirk's like, they're offering their peace, they want to be friends or whatnot, and this guy's just like, you have no idea what these people are capable of. They will use us as eat us and cook us. And he's just like, no, no, they want to be friends. They want to be friends. They're done. And basically, this guy's like, I'm not having any of it. They're gonna kill us. I'm gonna kill you. So he just comes rolling down this hill. He's hundreds of feet above Kirk. He just comes rolling down, and then he like tackles Kirk, and you're like, oh man, he's gonna kill Kirk because you're thinking this is this huge lion. And it turns out it's like this little itty bitty chihuahua sized animal, and it just like jumps on Kirk and goes on his back, and it's it's so funny because its depth and dimensions are just like you think it's gonna be like this big scary thing, and Kirk is like, being boss about it. He's just like, no, 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 we're good. Trust me, we're good. And it was just great. The movie started off immediately firing on all cylinders. Introduced you immediately to what would be the biggest piece of the story, which was this peace offering was actually this piece of an old weapon. And, they didn't know at the time, but that would be what was, lured, you know, to them to what eventually would be an ambush. Basically, this old weapon was from this planet where they had this device that actually used like these micro, like tiny particles, and they would just attack one thing, and they would just envelop it and destroy it. And it's basically like a super bio weapon, like almost like nanites from the movie iRobot. If anyone ever saw that, how like these little tiny robots would like jump onto the non-organic forms, and they would just eat everything, and they would just disappear. That's sort of like what it was like. Uh, but yeah, it was the last piece that was missing from this thing that ended up being like what the main guy Crawl was actually after the whole time. Uh, Basically, they go back, they store this piece that was, Kirk gets teleported out. They end up saying, all right, well, this is a relic that we're not going to do anything with. Let's just put it in the files and store it, and we'll deal with it later. And they go back to this little space station, and this is where you start really seeing the little bit of character development they do, which I was first off, I was very impressed with how little character development they were going into for these characters that we already know everything about. They didn't beat you over the head with the relationship between Spock and Uhura. They didn't go into some craziness about Kirk's past and how sad he was. They had like one scene with Kirk and Bones where they discussed, like, the fact that it was his birthday and it was the eve of his father's death, and how they don't normally celebrate his birthday. You're like, whatever. But and then there was like a small scene where you realize that Spock and Uhura are basically on the rocks. Potentially, Spock was thinking he needed to fulfill his Vulcan obligations to reproduce, so his species could once again be thriving. So, there's some rocks there. That's like the only real backstory there is. There's no like craziness, emotional involvement, or anything else like that. So they go right into it. The three things you see that it has been this many years since Kirk's dad has died. Kirk is 39 years old. He's a year older than his father was when he gave his life for him. You get beat over the head again with the whole what his father gave. His father gave everything for the group, and Kirk trying to live up to it again. Kirk goes through this weird considering leaving Starfleet because he doesn't think that he's, I guess, has a reason to do it anymore. He's not enjoying space as much. But basically, applies for this admiral position at this giant space station, and like, oh yeah, it's great that you put in. We'll review it after you go do this emergency situation because we just got a hitchhiker coming in here in a vessel that had no power, pretty much, and they need help out in this area of this one nebula that no one can explore. There's no way to communicate, but we need you to go over there and explore it because you have the fastest, best ship for the situation. So Kirk loads up all his people, and he's getting ready to leave. During this time, you get to find out a couple really cool things about the backstory. Obviously, there was the Spock Ahura thing with the breaking up, but there was also the realization that Ambassador Spock, Leonard Nimoy's character, has died. So basically, that was what prompted Spock to really think that he needed to maybe fulfill obligations. And then you also see that, believe it or not, Mr. Sulu, Okada Sulu, actually has a family. Like, he is. I'm not sure how this happened. I'm not sure if he's gay in the show or if he is actually has a wife that maybe died or something. Because you don't see a female picture, but you see a picture of the daughter on the helm, and then you see her for the first time in the space station where he sees her, and he's holding her, but there's a guy with her, and he embraces the guy, and I'm not sure. I feel like they could have been a little bit more direct. I think we're all adults, but I think they were trying to scare away the audience of potentially Mr. Sulu being gay. I know that originally the actor who played Mr. Sulu was gay. So if Mr. Takai is actually open about it, I don't know why they wouldn't have made the character a little bit more obvious about it, because basically they just have the arm around each other and that's it. Like, there's no like hug, there's no kiss, there's nothing that signifies a for sure, yes, Mr. Sulu is in an intimate relationship with this person. So I kind of don't know whether if this was maybe a friend and that is his niece, or his like a cousin and that's his niece or something, or you know how it works. But I don't know. I want to say it's his daughter because it feels like there's a strong emotional attachment between him and the girl. But as for the man, I don't know the actual relationship extent, and I wish they had done a better job of explaining that. But immediately we're jumping out into the nebula. It shows the Star Trek Enterprise going through this crazy looking like nebula of crashing rocks, and just it's insane looking. Like, I really wish I had seen this movie in 3D because everything looks so cool. Like, it was ridiculous. J.J. Abrams and Justin Lin, you guys are monsters when it comes to like this kind of like space stuff, because if I was ever in space and seeing things like this is what I would imagine like a rock nebula in the middle of space would be like. Just this cluster of rocks constantly smashing into each other. It was so cool. Uh, Now we get to the end of this nebula. They come out, and this was another issue I had right when it comes out, is that immediately once they get to the other side, this person who they had brought back with them to help her people immediately should have been like under gunfire, like by this random attack. It was like these almost invisible miniature ships that were just immediately starting to attack the Enterprise. They immediately disable the shields. They immediately disable, like, the power supplies to the ship. And the ship is basically just this lifeless body. And it is a 15-minute, 20-minute sequence almost of this ship just being basically gutted, ripped apart, and left for dead while they're on board trying to retrieve what we don't know at the time is basically this artifact. Spock basically catches one of the guys getting it out of containment, realizes what they're going for, and immediately starts, like, they would say, realize that he sees what they're after. He starts running. They're chasing him. He runs into Bones. It's just this whole craziness. Like, it's intense. Like, Crawl, played by Idris Elba, is a monster. He's scary. I really don't know how he didn't kill Kirk right off the bat, because he was just messing him up. Crawl like buries his ship in, immediately gets off, and gets the artifact. And instead of just leaving the artifact, like leaving with the artifact, he is like still on the ship fighting hand to hand combat with Kirk. And I would think he would have like tried to do more to get off the ship, which was kind of weird. But at the same time, maybe it was about like trying to disable the ship fully from the inside or something. But basically, Kirk is able to MacGyver this artifact away from them and is able to hide it, which the hiding place was so stupid, but at the same time, I could see it working that way. I don't feel like a normal person would think in terms of what a random alien's anatomy would be able. He basically finds this alien chick that's on the Enterprise and says, "Hey, I need you to hide this, but I need you to hide it in a place they're not going to suspect." So she basically has these tentacle things that latch open and what on the back of her head, and she hides this artifact right here on the back of her head and closes the tentacles around it. Now, for me, I'm thinking to myself, you could never do it with a human because there's only one place on a human that could go, and I feel like that's exactly what happens with the alien chick. Except she's kind of like, no, it's fine, it's completely normal. I normally keep a Pop Tart up there when I'm waiting for class to start. So that was a little bit weird, but I mean, it is what it is. I guess you can take advantage of a situation if it's life or death for your whole crew. I guess you got to try to delay the inevitable as long as you can. So basically, the Enterprise gets stripped. They get power back for a brief moment from Scotty, and they're like trying to gun it. Crawl gives the order to cut the throat of the ship, and they just immediately cut all power. They sever the ship into pieces, and this ship just starts going careening down into the planet. So there's people ejecting, but the thing is, there's so many of these little mini ships that these mini ships are just capturing all the escape pods. So anyone that's trying to escape is just going to end up a prisoner anyways. So everybody gets off the ship, but they're all prisoners, with the exception of course, the few 3 or 4 that actually get off that are meaningful characters in the show. So, like, obviously, Bones, Spock, Kirk, Chekhov, they all get off and they're free. They are 100% not captured. I would think like the biggest priority people are not captured. You would probably be like, crap, we should probably do our best to find those people ASAP. There's no search party for them. They don't look for them. Uh, but anyways, so they crash land on the planet. Sulu, Hora, these people are all captured, and it's the entire crew of the Enterprise is just basically in this camp, and they're going to be basically working as slaves while I guess this guy is formulating his next part of his plan while he looks for the piece. He's trying to use the crew maybe as leverage to get the piece back. Uh, Basically, this is where we're introduced to Jayla. Simon Pegg's character is crash landed, survives, bumps into a couple of goons on the planet. Jayla comes to his rescue, and she finds out that he's an engineer because he has a Star Trek, the logo from Enterprise and Starfleet. So she's like, "Hey, you can help me maybe," and she brings him back to her home, which turns out is like this old ship, this old Federation starship that got lost back when the program first started. Like they like, "Oh yeah, what happened to that ship? I don't know. It got lost in a storm. Oh, I don't know. Some big green hand came out of the space and grabbed it and took it out of our lives forever." Turns out that it was just shanghaied and crashed there, and the crew all died. So it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of rough. What can you do in that situation, right? So basically, Jayla is living inside this old ship. So they have a ship. They just need to find a way to make it work again. So even though the Enterprise is gone, ripped to pieces, absolutely destroyed, incapable of being used again, there is a ship on the planet, which definitely filled my curiosity for how the heck are they going to get off this planet whenever I saw it in the trailer. I just saw pieces of the Enterprise all over the planet. So that was nice. Kind of a little too convenient, but they filled in the backstory of it really well. So I can't really be too mad about that. Basically, skip forward here, and we realize that there's a lot of backstory to this actual ship that crash landed. When they tried doing research, they realized it was like all these people. This was back from when Starfleet actually used military, people. Like your commander and captain was always someone that had military background, and basically that's what the main character, the main protagonist in this was Crawl, and he was this captain named Edison, and he basically was this extremely smart military combat experience guy, and he crash landed on this planet and was basically left. There was no way to communicate. They're on the other side of this nebula that blocked all communications, and there was no way for them to communicate back to Starfleet to get help. So they were stuck here, and they thought they were abandoned. And basically, this whole time, like they were on this planet, they realized that the planet was giving them this, unique power to extend their life, like prolonged life on this planet. And it changed the way they looked. It changed everything about them, their appearance. They became these scaly looking, darker creatures, but it was different. It was definitely different. But you basically, as Crawl gets, I almost believe it's almost sort of like him being able to drain life force to extend his own life, because that's what he did to a couple of people in the movie. Like, he goes into Sulu and Uhura's prisoner camp and basically just like sucks the life out of two people, and he immediately goes from this old battered face to this younger, more virile face, and you're just like, oh, that probably has to do with the fact that he just sucked the life out of two people. So, yeah, that's what I want to think that he did. I'm trying to think of where to go with this. Basically, he goes into this rant about how unity and peace, and how like the space station is basically a mockery of what humans are really meant to do, which is combat, thrive, survive. And it's just this very, very conflict is necessary type mentality. And basically, that's the whole theme, is that he says, you know what? You guys are at peace, and what better way to disturb that peace than to go after the space station that has hundreds of different species at peace? So he basically says he's going to take this super weapon once he gets the other half of it, and he's going to attack that other place. Well, eventually, you find out whenever Sulu and Uhura get loose, they try to go send a distress signal to Starfleet using the different podiums that they had. They have like these little things. They were piggybacking signal through the nebula, and they were able to realize that they were thinking, send a signal, we can get out of here. They send a signal, and it turns out all they were doing was sending a signal so Crawl was able to pinpoint the location of where they were trying to send it to, so he knows where to attack. And they find out right after, when Crawl basically tells them his everything. He just tells them the whole story. He's like, I know everything about you. I've been researching your information. The moment you guys got that piece, that was whenever I made you my target. And they sent this girl to be bait, basically, for the Federation, and they fell for it. They completely fell right into it, and it was an insane game that he played, because it was a great move, because they had no chance. They were fighting these thousands and thousands and thousands of ships that they couldn't even possibly outnumber. So they end up having to think, if these things are like bees, like JLo's calling them bees, what exactly is, a weakness that we can do? There's too many ships for us to fight them all. So they realize that maybe they operate like a hive mind. So what they do is they get together this theory of being able to like project a signal to these things and take them all out as one unit. But basically, they find out whenever they get back, he realizes that Kirk's crew means more to him than anything. So he basically goes out into the courtyard, and he goes, I'm going to kill Mr. Sulu, puts his hand, starts sucking the life out of Mr. Sulu before the alien web lady is like, don't do it, don't do it. And she gives up the piece that he's missing. So he starts loading up ship. He's ready to go to the space station. It, Chekhov, Kirk, and them, they're like, we have to try to make a stop on this. But we have all of our people, stuck in camps, and we can't teleport them out because there's a distress signal that's blocking it. So they have to like go in there with Jayla, and she has like this really, really cool technology. It reminds me a lot of like Total Recall. How in Total Recall he uses a hollow projector to make multiple of himself, and that's what Kirk uses. He ends up riding this motorcycle that's on the old Franklin spaceship. So he ends up riding this thing in there with a hologram projector. So there's two or three like motorcycle riding Kirks driving around it all the time, and he's like shooting people, using misdirection to trick people, creating a big distraction while all these people are just slowly just teleported out by Scotty onto the new ship. And so by the time all these people are all teleported out, it's Jayla, and we find out that her past is pretty cool, very similar to Kirk's actually. Her family is her father is killed, basically sacrificing himself for Jayla to get free, and run away from the group, and at least run out into the forest and be free on her own and survive without being under captured by these people, like Crawl and his goons. So she basically encounters the guy who killed her father, and basically has to fight him one on one. And she does an amazing job. She is such a badass. I love her, and she's just a boss. She kicks his ass, but he kicks her ass at the beginning, but she like finds her spirit and like jumps on him and is able to really just kick his ass, and it's just great. Uh, Ends up doing this epic like grab my hand, jump on the from the motorcycle, and they grab and they teleport out using they warp out, I guess, and they're beamed into the spaceship. They immediately take off after Crawl, who's on his way back to the space station of Yorktown, and it's a lot to think that's all happening, but the development was perfect. Like it wasn't too like beat you over the head with what's going to happen, but it was just enough to let you know what's going to happen. Uh, it was great. They go in there, they use this mentality of sending out a signal to one that would go out to all, and they play they play music over a megaphone at a super high frequency, which ends up destroying all the ships within like a certain frequency. So it's basically, imagine this: a spaceship, just this giant like wave of ships just covering your entire screen, and then the Enterprise, or not the Enterprise, but the Franklin, just like zipping through all of it and destroying hundreds of ships every second, just because it's like nothing can get close to it. When you get close to that ship, the sound is so loud it just explodes everything. They upload the signal into the actual, you know, uh, facility, and the facility space station starts playing it too. So they're already protected, but the whole outside of the thing just lights up everything that's trying to break in, and they kill the thousands that are around the outside of the thing. So then it's just left down to just three ships. You got the three ships left with Crawl and his two minions, and they're flying through this base because they're inside of it now, and it's the Enterprise, Spock and Bones, and they're chasing these three ships, and they can't chase them because they're just too experienced in their ships and they're too fast and they can't catch them. The Enterprise is inside this inner workings of the ship and they just can't really do anything. They do like this crazy U-turn and are able to head off ahead of them and cause this amazing crash bridge where Crawl just slams right into the bow of the Enterprise. And you're thinking, oh wow, that probably killed him. No, Crawl has basically stolen the life of the three red shirts that have come into the area where he crashed, and he's got enough of his human look back where it's just Idris Elba at this point. He basically looks exactly like Idris Elba the actor. No makeup, no nothing. It's just Idris Elba looking boss as anything, walking around with this super weapon in his hand. He's gonna release it into like the air duct system, and Kirk knows that, and he's got to try to head him off. So he meets Kirk in the airlock system, and while he's about to set off this thing to where it's going to just run around using the gravitational pull inside this facility to destroy it little by little, he just is overwhelmed. Kirk just does an amazing job. He's very passionate in his speech. He's like, you may be a warrior, but I'm like a captain. I'm a better captain because I'm a better leader because I care about the lives of these people, and I'm not gonna just fight for my own life. I'm gonna fight for all of theirs. And he's able to basically subdue Idra's character Edison, and able to like overtake him, beat him down. He is an old man. He's hundreds of years old at this point. So from his prolonged life or whatever, but he's about to try to get all this stuff together and eject this super weapon into space so it doesn't kill the entire facility. Is it ends up ejecting into space. Idra goes to grab the super weapon, or goes to grab Kirk. Kirk kicks him into the super weapon. So he's like being covered in this nano things that are just slowly ripping him apart, basically, while he's being sucked out into space. And basically, the movie ends where you find out that Jayla's going into Starfleet through thing. Kirk turns down his apprenticeship to no his vice ambassador to admiral of the space station. I think is what the title was. It was like vice admiral, ambassador to the space station. And Spock decides that even though he wants to do what's right for the entire Vulcan species and produce with Vulcans and make little Vulcan babies, that he kind of needs to do what's right for him. And what's right for him isn't necessarily good for the entire race, and you can definitely tell that he wants to still be with Uhura. So at the end, you definitely feel like they're trying to mend that up again. But they didn't beat you over the head with that relationship like they did in the second movie. I felt like the second movie was more about Spock, and this movie was more about the new character Jayla than I would say any other character. They made the movie about her. I felt because she had a similar backstory to Kirk. They gave a reason to fight, and they clarified why she wanted to fight, and she played a huge role in the whole movie. Uh, Kirk felt like almost he didn't. He felt like he took back seat to me, which was nice. I really felt like I wasn't being beat over the head with the same story that I've seen twice already. So it was definitely nice to see other characters that you don't know much about take the spotlight. It wasn't a Sulu, it wasn't a Uhura, it wasn't a Spock. It was some random alien from the planet who turns out to be like the real what I would consider to be the hero. If it hadn't been for her, they wouldn't have been off the planet. They wouldn't have found the ship that got them off the planet. They wouldn't have been able to figure out how to destroy the swarm. It it was 100% her movie. Kirk had his ideas. Kirk had a lot of great ideas, but it was 100% her that made all those ideas a reality. And I thought it was great because if there was ever a female character that I wanted to get behind for empowering women and being a boss, it's this character. I'm saying this right now, Hollywood. If you want to like really get strong women that have independent views to be like a more respectable thing in movies, make more characters like Jayla. Jayla is perfect. She is independent. She's attractive. She's not sexy, but she is like she's attractive and she's great in combat. She's independent. She doesn't need anyone. And if anything, I think that right there is the perfect way to go for women's rights. And if you want to look for equality in acting and actressing, I think that is the character women want to see. I mean, you could have she didn't even have that revealing of clothing. She was wearing like just a regular worker's outfit. So I mean, I definitely felt that she has the potential to be this really boss character in the future, and I hope they bring her back. Overall review of the movie. I basically finished it. We all know what's going on. Star Trek's going to make another movie. She's going to go to Starfleet. Hopefully, she comes back, and the Enterprise is going to be up and built again. Unfortunately, there won't be an Anton, and there won't be a Leonard Nimoy in the next one. So, Anton Yelton, you'll be missed. He had a little shout out with Leonard Nimoy at the end credits. No end credits scenes, so you don't have to worry about sticking around for it. Overall, the movie was incredible. I thought the movie was great, start to finish. There were a few little nuances in the movie, like there are with any movie that you're like, oh, they could have done that better. But it was a great movie. That was random. It was a great movie through and through. I would definitely recommend anyone to see it. If you've already seen it and you're here because you wanted to see the spoiler reviews to see if I had the same similar views, I'm glad you stuck around. I'm glad you watched the whole video. It's going to be close to a half hour long. If you have any questions, comments, want to discuss something, miss something in the movie you need explained, hit me up. I'm definitely going to go see it again in 3D here next week. Just send a comment, give it a thumbs up, hit me with a subscribe. I'm probably not going to be getting a lot of those because I know a lot of people probably won't watch too much of the whole video. But if you do stick around and watch the whole video, thank you for sticking around. And I hope that maybe this is something I could do again in the future. Definitely want to do this on a couple other movies. So I'll be doing my spoiler free, and I'll be doing a trailers review for the 3 trailers that were before the movie. So check those out too. Give them a thumbs up if you like them. And thanks for sticking with me.